Welcome to Her Success Matters, a podcast exploring how advisors can work together to build a pathway for women to succeed in financial services. I am your host, Christine Shaw, CEO of InvestmentNews. This podcast will give you rare insider access to the top financial services executives who are taking action to break down the barriers for the next generation of female advisors. Today, we have a special edition of Her Success Matters dedicated as a tribute to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I am also joined today by a co-host, none other than Liz Skinner, Senior Special Projects Editor for InvestmentNews. So welcome, Liz.
Thank you, Christine.
You wrote an incredible piece that I really thought it was so important for us to take this moment in time, really not just honor Ruth because she deserves that, but talk about her work and why it is so important and the legacy she's left and the pathway she's helped forge for women to come. So let's get right into your article and talk about what drove you to write that piece.
Of course, all of us on the staff felt like the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg was something that we didn't want to just have go by. We obviously write about financial topics, but she was so important in so many ways, both to women's rights and really that fight for equal access to everything from jobs to savings accounts and such. So we decided that, we couldn't let this moment pass without writing a little bit about the ways that she was really important to women and their search for financial independence and ability to have careers and lives by themselves.
That's such a great point to pick up on, and it's really what started Her Success Matters is the need to have more women, not just part of financial services, but to be able to give them a voice at the table, a seat at the table, and the knowledge in which they have to control financial outcomes, not just for themselves personally, but for other women and just other people who maybe have not had access to that before. You talk in your article about the fighting for equality with women making 80 cents to a man's dollar, with so few women topping the organizational chart of the nation's largest companies. Tell me about some of the work you're familiar with that Ruth did that was helping to change that dynamic.
It's really the work that she did while she was an attorney in the 1970s that really helped kind of change the way the Supreme Court approached women's rights. And this was well before she even herself was appointed to the Supreme Court. She really took on the idea of these sex-based policies and kind of turned it on its head. And the way she really did that was because in several of the initial cases that she took on, her legal theory was really about inequalities experienced by men. In one of the cases where she represented a widower, his name was Stephen Weisenfeld, she challenged a Social Security Act provision that gave parental benefits only for widows who had minor children. Now, Weisenfeld's wife had actually died giving birth to their son. And then when he applied for these parental benefits, he was denied them, even though, of course, he had to deal with all the financial and other difficulties of raising a child alone. So in this case, when the Supreme Court finally ruled in this case in 1975, and this was actually Ginsburg's first of 5 wins she had arguing before the Supreme Court, the court really ruled that such sex-based discrimination was unconstitutional. And that was literally the first time that had ever occurred. And then 2 years later, she represented another man, his name was Leon Goldfarb, and challenged another one of the sex-based provisions of the Social Security Act. Again, this was regarding survivor benefits. And the Social Security Administration at that time provided widows with survivor benefits if their husbands died, as long as they had been paying into Social Security. However, for widowers to collect such benefits, they had to prove that they had been financially dependent on their wives' earnings. Finally, the Supreme Court ruled that policy actually deprived female wage earners of that protection that male workers in that same position would have received, which violated equal protection. So those were some of the decisions that she pushed for out of the Supreme Court while she was an attorney in the 70s. These cases broadened civil rights law and 14th Amendment protection for women.
So thank you for sharing all of that, because I don't know that people understand all that background unless they really dig into the research that you've done to show really that when you as a human, as a company, and just in general care about humanity, equality, and ensuring that we all have equal rights, it provides a better outcome. And certainly the work she did as an attorney back in the 70s was really game changing. And then you think about fast forwarding to the Supreme Court and her role there.
So I know Ruth Bader Ginsburg's fight to require jobs be there available for women after they deliver babies and go through some weeks of childcare, to be obligated to be able to return to those jobs, is something that, as far as all the things that she's done, is very personal to me. And I know you too, Christine. I mean, we were both able to return to jobs after our pregnancies with our children, and that leads to our own financial security in ways that it just hadn't been imagined 40 and 50 years ago.
I share those personal views as well, because I had 2 children now. They're both successful adults, and I can remember when I left on maternity leave, and it was such a reassuring feeling to sit with my boss and for him to say to me, take the time you need, don't worry about your job. It'll be here when you get back. And to just be able to go home and focus on your child and having a baby, that meant the world, and not having to think about your job and having it there when you come back. Because you're right, there was a time that was not possible.
Well, and now I have 2 college-age daughters, and I think about all the things that Ruth Bader Ginsburg has made possible for me, and thus all the things that I'm sure aren't even imaginable to me that they will get to do and not experience some of the challenges that, when there is such inequality between the sexes that we all had to deal with.
Talk a little bit about why you think this type of mindset is so important for companies and how that helps women continue this mission forward in today's financial services and industry.
Well, once Ginsburg got to the Supreme Court, she continued her push for equality. And in her rulings, she focused on making sure that women could have the same strength and financial independence as men. And that included access to jobs. Frankly, one of the big cases that she was a part of in her rulings was making sure that after women would leave a job and go have a baby, that they were able to return to those jobs after pregnancy. That was something that she fought to have happen, because women are having the babies in our culture. If you can't go have a baby and create your family and then return to your job, that's not equal ability to take care of yourself financially.
Yeah. And, on that point, Liz, it's interesting because some of the research that we've studied throughout this podcast series has shown that one of the number one reasons women pause their career and never come back is because they don't find a way back after taking maternity leave, which is really a tough place. And I think we're doing a lot to help change that, and has, thanks to Ruth and the work she did, or the notorious RBG, that really has helped to create that pathway forward. And it's interesting because you wrote in your article about it also allows women to become more active in their financial destiny and in the confidence, right? Their confidence about having the right to go back, having right to equal pay, and being a participant in their own financial security. And it's been amazing to me that how many women in the past and still currently don't feel that they have that option. We're changing that through the work of Ruth, through the work of the organizations and all the amazing women that we've had on this podcast. And you're a fantastic example of a person who has had an amazing career, many years of which, luckily for us at Investment News. And you speak a lot to women through our Women Advisor series and a lot of our other platforms. So tell me now, being in the field, seeing these women in action and hearing from them, what are some of your observations that you could share that would help instill some confidence in women as we go forward?
In studying, women investors, we have seen study after study and surveys done that really show women feel like they lack financial literacy. They don't have the confidence that they can take care of their own finances. And that is something that while we're seeing the gap, kind of this financial literacy gap between men and women close, it's still there. I know many of the female financial advisors who as you mentioned, do a lot of work with and have really focused on helping them grow their practices and such. They deal with a lot of female investors, and they're really focused on helping make sure, for instance, when they have a couple come into their office, that they give equal attention, at least, to the female partner of the couple as the male in the couple. Because often, most cases still, men are taking the focus of the financials on themselves. And therefore, in a meeting with an advisor, they may be more vocal. And while the woman of the couple might be having a lot to say afterwards, in the actual meetings, they're not asking the questions that they really have. Female financial advisors, I'm finding, are prioritizing, making sure they bring out the woman's questions and really help educate her on whichever aspect of the couple's finances she may be least familiar with or have the most questions about. If you don't know what's going on in your own financial life, or you feel like you don't understand, then it's only natural that you would kind of take a back seat. That's not financial security.
No, you're right. That was very well said and put. And it's like, that's the thing. We have to insist on having a front seat in our path to earning money and having our say about money, understanding it. So I do agree that the point around financial literacy is one that is a big fact that we uncover and we continue to work on. And certainly the work that Ruth has done has helped to create some more opportunity, and that will hopefully continue on for many generations to come. And so when you step back and think about it, from the iconic collars that she wore to today, the Fearless Girl statue in the financial district of New York, it's certainly a symbolic and really recognizable time in history. We hope that this is just the beginning forward, because we still have a lot of work to do to close that gap.
Well, we do. And I mean, in the piece, I kind of make the point that financial advisors, men and women, both have this great opportunity that they can take the extra effort. And sometimes it will mean pushing a woman to become more active in her financial destiny. And she may need some extra education in order to gain the confidence to recognize that she has the rights and really the responsibility to fight for her own financial security. And advisors really stand in this crucial role of being able to help with that.
I love that you put the rights and the responsibility. And it's not just the female's job. It's men as allies, and we've talked about that a lot too. And I love that Ruth had some work that she did on behalf of men too. This has been terrific. I really appreciate the work you did on the article, the tribute that Investment News has done to the important work that RBG has done for women, humankind, and the industry as we move forward. Thank you so much for joining me in this conversation and sharing your thoughts and your perspective and why this matters to financial advisors.
Well, thanks so much for having me on the podcast, Christine.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Her Success Matters. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available, and share this podcast with others that believe her success matters.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Investment News. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.